working fine? I think we should get back to how you make a living as a writer. We would all like to know more about that. And I think a lot of people came here because it was a cheap place to live once upon a time. That's how we made a living as a writer here. Thank you all for coming, and thank you for supporting Elk River Arts and Lectures. Russell Chatham, while primarily known as a painter, was also a printmaker, a restaurateur, and a world-class fly fisherman. He was a talented cook, an enthusiastic drinker, an unabashed lover of women, looking at you, Liz, and an iffy businessman. He married 3 times, owned many old cars, and during the 5 decades he spent in Livingston, employed a solid percentage of the town. He wanted everything to be peerless, and he wanted to control each detail. If he could have milled the wood in his frames, he would have. If he could have printed lithographs with inks and papers of his own making, he would have. When he couldn't buy a good meal in town, he bought a restaurant. And between 1986 and 2009, off and on, he was a book publisher, producing more than 36 volumes of poetry and novels and collections of essays and photography and art at Clark City Press in the offices above Saxon Friar. Some titles were passion projects, most of them were by friends, and almost all of them were graced by his own paintings, which he often gave his authors in lieu of cash advances. Those authors in the beginning were a group he'd fished and eaten and traveled with for years. Tom Wayne, Gats Yordsberg, Guy de la Baden, Dan Gerber, and Jim Harrison, who was my father. The list grew to include amazing writers like Rick Bass and Jim Crumley, Barry Gifford and Terry Tempest Williams. When we had to shut down, I was editing a book by Peter Matheson with another 10 titles planned. But if the press had survived, that list might have included Gretel Ehrlich, Alan Jones, and Max Yordsberg, as well as other people in this talented town. Russell changed my life, and not just because I moved here because of him, and edited at Clark City for 5 years and 30 books. Before that, when I was a kid, he helped teach me to cook and also taught me a lot about pure glee, about inspiration of all kinds, and about art. In a way, tonight is a celebration of a failed business. But raise your hand if you worked for Russ, are related to someone who worked with Russ, drank or ate with Russ. Thank you. Or loaned money to Russ in hopes of scoring a painting. Dick Murphy, Russell's friend and frame maker for decades, is here tonight. His sisters Cindy and Mikhail put in their years in the salt mines too. The woman who helped Russell publish Clark City Press's first book, Laurel Desnick, is here. That's Dr. Desnick to you. And so is Stacy Sandler, who handled production and design during the press's whole first life and truly kept things working. Janice Kimmel ran the shipping department of Proofread, along with a half dozen other friends. Sally Epps edited and published beautiful, brilliant books when the press was reborn with Chris King's help. And Joff Harvey moved up from Phoenix to become Russell's print man. Glenn Godward helped turn the bar and grill into a legend. Joe Swindlehurst dealt with any number and manner of legal problems. Steve Popenberg wrote perfect book contracts, and John Fryer was always patient with the rent and soothing when a person wanted to hide out. I think that Russell's true genius, beyond painting masterpieces, roasting ducks, and writing some of the best sporting literature ever published, was talking people into doing things that were worth doing, no matter how wrong-headed or doomed the project. He might have become or remained a rich man, despite his notorious budget, if he'd stuck to painting, but then where would we all be? He thought big and he pulled you along. He was inspirational and absolutely key to turning Livingston into the better part of the place we live now. So let's all toast Russell tonight, and let's toast to idealism. It's a fine group we have here tonight, so allow me to introduce Gretel Ehrlich, the prize-winning, widely anthologized essayist, novelist, poet, and journalist, whose many books include The Solace of Open Spaces, Heart Mountain, Facing the Wave, and Unsolaced. She's survived lightning strikes, multiple losses, and years in the Arctic, and we are thrilled to have her living even part of the time in Montana.
I think that the fact there's so many of you here tonight is a tribute to Jamie, and of course to Russell and everybody else in that fabulous crowd. But this is such a beautiful, beautiful book. It's not too long, it's not too anything, it has a sort of emotional resonance, and it's beautiful to look at, beautiful to hold, and I am going to read some of Tom McGuane's work about Russell. Tom was sort of gobsmacked about that fact, but he's not here, so I'm taking his place. So I never lived in Montana until recently. I didn't really know Russell. I think I met him a few times at the Bar and Grill, but I didn't know him. Yes, I made the mistake of living very, very remotely in Wyoming, and so I kind of missed all the fun. I gained a lot from living in Wyoming, but I was also lonely for all of this, and so now I'm here. When Solace came out, I got a phone call from Jim Harrison, who announced that he and Dan Gerber were already on the road coming to my ranch, which was really hard to get to, in about 3 days to pay tribute, not pay tribute, but to say hi. And I was completely astonished. They arrived. Jim was wearing a white flannel suit. And he was carrying, as he called it, a 12-pack of really elegant French wine. And he immediately got dirty. I mean, this was a really hard scrabble, end of the road mountain ranch. And I was terrified that I'd have to cook for somebody who was such a great cook. But we got along. They stayed for about 4 days. I don't really remember anything about it. We started drinking pretty early. But it was it gave me a sense of what all was going on up here. About the same time, I met Lori and Tom McGuane, and we've been pretty steady friends for 41 years. We've sometimes lived close together, often not. We've ridden together, we've sailed together. We've, really just stayed in contact. And, Tom is one of the funniest people I've ever met in my life, but also deeply, what is it about Tom McGuane? He's just an unusual person, just his sardonic humor and his wonderful stories and novels, nothing quite like them. I guess I always told him I didn't move to Montana because I don't fish. But about 9 years ago, he called out of the blue and he said, "Isn't it about time you came up here so you'll have someone to talk to?" And so I did. He said, "I want you to move close to us," so I moved as close as I could. And I still don't fish, but I read the water. So this is what Tom wrote about in about, I think, 1984, about your father. live in flyover country, we try to figure out what's going on elsewhere by subscribing to magazines. Recently, I was surprised to see in a famous art publication great attention directed to paintings of innumerable pastel beans. Another page displayed a huge shadowless lozenge. A passionate column explained colored space units to me once and for all. The only painter I know very well is one of my best friends, and he lives up at the top of the creek upon which my ranch is located. I own a number of his paintings. Most of them are landscapes, powerful evocations of Montana, full of light, shapes, and ideas, ruled by the most dignified style. His name is Russell Chatham. I thought of Russ as I read about the pastel bean paintings. Frankly, the shadowless lozenge troubled me more than the others. I felt it was keeping customers of art from buying my friend's paintings, and moreover relegating him to a life on the barter system when the rest of the world danced merrily to cash register tunes. Why was Russ being singled out? Why was the lozenge after him? One thing that might be considered is that the habit of trading still exists in Montana. Whether this is a vestige of the Old West, the Depression, or a reflection of limited job opportunities, I couldn't say. But ranchers couldn't operate on their limited usually one-family workforces if they couldn't trade services and commodities, meat for hay, wire for water, a rifle for a TV, horse breaking for truck repairs. Montana's bartering habits are such that when mate swapping finally arrives, it would have a vigorous future. A wife for a drum of diesel, a husband for a crossbow, or a gerbil exercise wheel. That's Tom. When I decided to go around the area to look at some of the paintings Chatham had done over the last decade, I thought first of my neighbors, Wilbur and Dorotha Lambert. Is that how you say it? Dorotha, yeah. They've been here all their lives and typify a minority of extremely hardworking farmer ranchers, contemptuous of the cowboy myth. When I got to the Lamberts, Wilbur had been digging some gravel for one of his projects and found an old Indian dinner party, a young buffalo skeleton, charred bones cracked for their marrow, and a neatly cleaved skull. There were bits of obsidian scattered with the bones. We went inside and looked at the paintings. One was a mysterious little grassy landscape with a rather expressionist sheep evaporating in the middle. Wilbur said, "It's just like when you come across the cow pass. Up close it don't look like nothing, but you stand back and it's real natural-like." Dorotha called from the kitchen saying, "My dough is rising. I'm not ignoring you, but my husband don't like boughten bread." "What do you think of Russ's painting?" I asked her. "Oh, it's so different. I love it. It's just him." "What'd you give for it?" "A load of firewood and an armful of smoked whitefish." On the wall was an uncanny portrait of Wilbur in hard sunlight, with the ruination of a hat he wears while irrigating. That was exchanged for babysitting with Russ's daughter, probably you, clothing repairs, and zucchini. They liked Chatham because, quote, "He don't have no airs, and he don't go telling you how you should do it." Yes, when I, yeah, okay. Where am I? I was sitting in William Hortzberg's house at Pine Creek. He's the son of a Scandinavian immigrant and the author of cool and often terrifying works of fiction. He's a Chatham owner. The first thing he bought was a sketch. "I was drunk when I bought it," he explained. At the time, the sketch seemed to contain all the world's happiness in a portable version. Sober, he paid for it in 4 installments. He also owns a mysterious, nearly monochromatic winter landscape with a single smoke-like yellow aspen, odder than the most pastel flying bean. Almost my earliest acquaintance with Russ Chatham, or Hortzberg recalled. I was staying at your place in Key West. A man came to the door looking for Chatham. I thought it was an insurance salesman. It was the FBI. I heard Prokofiev in my mind. I saw J. Edgar Hoover. I called Russ. He was staying in Nicasio, California, at a fraternal organization called Druids Hall. Someone had circulated a seditious newsletter from his address, and Chatham kept writing the FBI to explain, and they kept arriving after he had gone somewhere else. Hortzberg indicated the large Chatham oil, a Yellowstone landscape. It's going against the wrong wall, he complained, but it's the only place it can go. I bought a light for it from Brookstone's hard-to-find tools catalog, but it just made a big splotch on it. You have to wait for winter. Then the leaves fall and light comes through the windows. That's when you have to see it. Thank you.